to the Courageous Self-Care podcast. I'm your host, Christina Marlette. On this show, we talk about self-care that goes beyond bubble baths and chocolate and wine. And the reason that I like to say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, there's nothing wrong with bubble baths and chocolate and wine. Like, we should stay clean and we should eat things and drink things that we love. But at the same time, if those are our only strategies, we're probably going to experience all sorts of trouble in the not too distant future. So with Courageous Self-Care, we like to take those strategies and build on them and really go inside where there's fear and there's murkiness and there's uncharted territory. It's like going into the woods. Often we need a guide. And so, hello, that's me. I am your Courageous Self-Care guide. And I love to have other guides help me on the show. So today I have my dear friend and wonderful mentor, Debra Poneman. Debra, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here. Any chance to spend time with you and your tribe, I jump at that chance.
I feel so honored. So Debra, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you are up to these days.
Who I am. Now that's, I've been contemplating that for many, many decades. Haven't figured it out yet. But, I have been called a transformational leader because I teach concepts around the world that transform lives. But of course, I think real transformational leaders don't have to teach anything. They just have to live transformation. They have to live truth. They have to live their greatness. They have to live courage. So who I am is someone who is constantly striving to do that, to be the best me that I can be, to be an individual who is coherent, who is aligned with my highest truth. I don't want to be somebody that teaches one thing and then behind the scenes, I'm a completely different person. So who I am is a person who is always striving to be the person that people look at me and they say, oh, she's a transformational leader. I want to be that person. I don't want to disappoint them, but mostly I don't want to disappoint myself. And one of my great teachers, Master John Douglas, says that when you die, you're shown two things. You're shown the life you were meant to live, the life you were put here to live, and the life that you lived. And I want to live the life I was born to live. I want to live the truth. I want to live the greatness. I want to live the contribution. And if I screw up, I want to be able to forgive myself for screwing up because we're human beings and none of us is perfect. But what I do in the real world is I have a company called Yes to Success, and I teach principles of creating true and lasting success. And that isn't success based on those fleeting things like titles and houses and fame and cars and best-selling books. The truth is that once you have what I call inner success, that immovable silence, that no matter if your book makes it to the bestseller list or doesn't make it to the bestseller list, you still feel successful inside. That's what I teach. And what's so profound about that is when you establish that true success from the inside out, it's much easier to create the bestseller book because you're not so attached to the outcome, but you're enjoying the ride and you take huge joy in the journey. And just that joy of loving the magic of every day, it ends up bringing you the outer success. But then if it's true success, if it goes away tomorrow, it's still not a dent in your happiness because it's not based on it staying or going away.
Well, I was just covered in cascades and cascades of goosebumps, the truth bumps, the God bumps while you were speaking. And that just sounded so delicious and eloquent and thought-provoking and heartfelt. So thank you for sharing that. I was thinking all sorts of things while you were speaking. And I don't remember any of them. So
I just must have been so mesmerizing that, they went out the window. Maybe it's, how do you achieve that? Could that be what you're thinking?
Well, it was certainly sounding like, yeah. Oh, I know. One thing that I was thinking was, boy, that detachment sure is a skill all unto itself. Yeah. I've worked on becoming detached, but I would say I'm still pretty attached to results and outcomes. So that is a great reminder that when we are so within that place of stillness and deep self-acknowledgement and self-celebration and self-love, it doesn't matter what's happening on the outside, because we can come back to that well and drink from it whenever we need refreshment.
Wow, that was beautifully said.
Well, we're just creating magic here today, Debra.
Yes. Yeah, you can go to that well and drink from it. Wow, I love the image, and it really is true. And I mean, we know that the whole thing of thinking you're going to be happy or feel successful when you have the top podcast, or when you have the bestseller book, or when your kids get the biggest awards at the school, or when you find your soulmate. But the truth is that people find their soulmates, and people's kids excel, and people get bestseller books. And you and I know, because we have friends who have had those types of experiences, and it doesn't change their level of happiness.
Right.
As a matter of fact, sometimes what happens is that people get something that they're striving for, and they're less happy because it doesn't change the inner landscape. Right. And they thought it was going to. And my mother used to say, you take yourself wherever you go. And it really, you take your level of inner happiness, that if you win the lottery, this has actually been proven that people win the lottery and they're happy for about 10 minutes. And a year later, they're at exactly the same level of happiness, or lower than they were before they won the lottery. So what we need to do is stop deluding ourselves and thinking that success is about something from the outside, but rather that it is that inner bliss, that inner silence, that inner foundation of immovability, that no matter if it's like a ship with an anchor, if the winds and the waves and the storm come, you still are anchored to the silent depths of yourself.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So that was fun. And what I'd love to get into now is, I love to have guests on the show share their current favorite self-care practice. And I like to qualify that current because we change, we transform, and things that we might have done at the beginning of the year or 10 years ago may no longer serve us. But it's great to understand that as long as we're doing something that we can classify as deep internal self-care, that's good enough. And I used to have this regime, and I thought I had to do it exactly the same every day, otherwise I'd be cheating. And that's not the way to approach self-care at all. So that's why I say current, and I'm very curious to hear what your current favorite self-care practice is.
Well, it's so interesting, Christina, because I have friends who are constantly saying to me, you never stop. You never take care of yourself. But it's just because I don't like bubble baths. And, right? And that's why I love what you're doing here. You're taking this idea that self-care is only about like going for a spa day or something. Now, I love spa days. That's fine. But everybody's self-care is different. And so don't try to tell your friends that they're doing it wrong, because your self-care doesn't look like their self-care. All right?
Right.
I mean, we were just talking a few minutes ago about how nature isn't my thing. It's like, I don't like to go out in nature because you get all dirty and stuff. But other people are like, did you just really say that? And I go, yeah, like you seen one tree, you've seen them all. And it's just different strokes for different folks, So just because you don't like bubble baths, it doesn't mean that you're not good at self-care. I have to tell you, my whole life is pretty much about self-care, even though I have the doubting committee that I ever take care of myself, because the truth is, I get up every morning and I meditate, and that is my basis. When I was talking about creating that inner silence, I don't skip a meditation, and actually I do about 10 minutes of breath practices, breathing practices before I do that. And before I do my breathing, I do about 10 minutes of yoga asanas. So I really get myself centered for the day doing those practices. Those are self-care. Your yoga, your breathing, your meditation, those are self-care. And then when I'm done with that and I come out, I go to the gym. And I go to the gym at least, you know that, I'm a fanatic. I love going to the gym, and I go at least 4 or 5, sometimes even 6 times a week. And I switch it up. I do strength training. I do aerobics classes. I do Nia. I do Zumba. I do all kind of hip hop. I just, every day, got to move that body, right? Like, use it or lose it. That's self-care, isn't it? That qualifies.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I come home and I make myself my green drink with some protein in it. That's self-care. Nourishing your body, that is self-care. And I eat really healthfully. That's self-care. So again, I don't particularly like bubble baths with candles around it, but I am very vigilant that my life is based on self-care. Mm-hmm. And I believe that these things that I do for my self-care create that silence that I'm talking about, that true success, that immovability. When you eat well, when you do your meditation, it actually creates that foundation of inner peace and inner silence. But that having been said, my absolute favorite piece of self-care is when I just say, whatever's going on in my life, I just say, excuse my French, screw it. And I'm just going to sit in bed with my daughter and binge watch junk TV. And my favorite, my daughter's and my favorite show that we sit and binge watch is a Canadian show. It's Schitt's Creek. Did you ever watch Schitt's Creek?
No.
Oh my gosh. It's a Eugene Levy. You know Eugene Levy?
I do, yes.
He created it with his son. He and his son did all the writing and the producing and the directing. Annie Murphy's in it. You've got to watch. It's won a bunch of what's the Canadian awards, their equivalent of the Academy Awards, whatever it is, it's won, because every year it wins awards. Oh, I'm turning you on to this. Schitt's Creek. SCHITT''S. Believe me, listeners, I am not steering you wrong. You are going to thank me every day when you too binge watch Schitt's Creek. And that's my favorite. Just sit in bed with my daughter and say, damn the torpedoes. We are just sitting in bed and binging here.
Well, I think that's such an important point that you're making, is that self-care is variable. It changes from person to person. It can change from day to day. And one of the most powerful things that we can do for self-care is to check ourselves and say, okay, so I know I have all these things that I said I want to do, and I'm not feeling it right now. So what is it that I can do that will help me want to do that again? And then do that thing.
Well said. It's true. It replenishes you.
Yeah.
You know, it fills the gas tank.
Yeah.
And me watching a bunch of junk TV with my daughter, we did in the U.S. Thanksgiving, we just sat in bed for 3 days. We said no to every invitation, and we just did our own thing. We watched TV, we ate popcorn. Our big event was going to Whole Foods.
Well, that is an event.
It was an event. And that was it. That was like a whole long weekend of courageous self-care.
Absolutely. Yeah. Saying no to invitations and setting boundaries and tuning in to what it is that you actually need, that does take courage. Like, it can take years to develop that skill set.
That's right.
I love that you shared that. Thank you so much. And you're just proving all sorts of points on what I teach. So yay. Yeah. So we're going to pause here and have a quick commercial break, and we will be right back. Okay, we are back. Debra and I are talking about amazing things. And so we're going to move into the next portion of the interview, which is I love getting my guests to share their story of courage. And now we all have so many stories of courage, and they range from the tiny little courageous moment, whatever it took to speak your truth or to honor what you said you wanted to do, or to say that you don't love nature. That takes courage. And then it goes all the way up to gigantic stories of courage, and those tend to be the ones that we want to share. But on this show, I love hearing all sorts of stories of courage, because courage is an energy, and the more we expose ourselves to it, the more it comes closer and closer and closer to us until it's embodied. It becomes a part of who we are. We understand that we're simply moving through fear to feel amazing and proud of ourselves on the other side. And like Brene Brown says, courage is contagious. So I feel like it's really valuable to hear other women's, and sometimes the occasional men's, story of courage, because it helps us understand, oh, that thing that I did, she just talked about that. I must be courageous too. Or it might be, wow, I've never experienced that, but I remember, but a few years down the road, it's happening to me now. And I remember that woman on that podcast did this, and maybe I could try that too. So I think there's great value in marinating in these stories of courage. So I'm really looking forward to hearing yours.
Okay, well, I think that you know a little bit about this, but I'm going to go into some more details about it. Okay, so one of my challenges in life, an area where I haven't had courage in the past, was speaking up for myself, or asking for what I needed, or speaking my truth if it was going to possibly cause disharmony or ruffle anyone's feathers. I had niceness patterns coming out of my ears. And I know that my parents were both that way. Everybody loved them. They were the nicest people, and they always took the crumbs. Okay. And I would always justify it like, oh, I'm such a nice person. Like I would go with some of my friends, and this actually happened. We went to a health spa type of place, and there were we had reserved 3 really, really nice rooms, and they got the reservation messed up. So there were 2 really, really nice rooms, and one that was like, practically like the janitor's closet. And I was like, oh, I'll take the janitor's closet. No, I'm fine in the janitor's closet. And these 2 friends, they didn't skip a beat. They were happy to have me in the janitor's closet. And it's interesting, if you look at your patterns, you actually draw people into your life who actually tend to reinforce the patterns more and more until you get a grip on it and you break through it. And then you can stop drawing those types of people into your life that reinforce the pattern. But anyway, mostly because I didn't like disharmony. So as you know, and I've told this story many times, is that I taught a course for 5 years, a program called Your Year of Miracles. You were a member, and that's how we met. So thank you, Your Year of Miracles, because I met Christina. And it's this fabulous year-long mentoring program for women. And 5 years ago, I created it with my dear, dear friend, Marcy Scheimoff. And I love the program. It's an incredible program. And the first couple of years when we were creating it, we thought we had died and gone to heaven because it was so much fun. Okay. I'm a creative. And around the 3rd year, it stopped being as fun for me because all of the material had already been created. We had miracle moments and miracle messages and miracle mentoring calls and miracles activations, but they had all been created. And we did pretty much the same thing every year because we had new people. And even if we didn't, you need to hear these things a couple times before you own them, before they live in you. So why would we change it if it was important for our new people and our continuing people? But it started not being as fun for me because I love the thrill of the creation. But, I just continued. And then the fourth year, it was like a little bit even less fascinating to me. And about halfway through the fifth year, I realized I was done. And I realized that I had to move on, and I had to do something that was creative in the way I like to be creative.
Yeah.
Okay. And create new material. And I was petrified to tell Marcy that I was ready to move on. And I always, first of all, it was a good gig. We had thousands of people, as you know, from, it was every year it was either 60, 70, 80 countries. And it was, just to be honest, it was quite lucrative. People could do the math. And it was a worldwide exposure. But I'm a creative, and it wasn't creative for me anymore. And about halfway through the fifth year, I realized I had to tell Mars that I wanted to move on. And the reason why I was so scared is because I didn't want to disappoint her. Mm-hmm. But I also knew that she would be upset. She might even be a little bit angry, justifiably so. She would be hurt. She would be like, oh no. But two things. One is, intellectually, I knew, because I taught this, that when you do what's best for yourself, it will always be what's best for everybody else. And if that inner voice is saying to you, it's time for you to move on. And really, I call it the voice of God, just whispering in your ear, giving you a little nudge. This relationship is over. I'm not with Mars, but with, if you're in a marriage or you're in a friendship and it just is not working anymore, or you're in a job and you are not feeling it anymore. And you get that little nudge. And if you don't listen to that little impulse, the nudge is going to it's going to become a push, and then the push is going to become a shove, and the shove is going to become getting hit on the head by a 2x4. And because if it's not right for you, then the laws of nature, the God of your understanding, the universe, spirit is not going to be supporting you. And but I don't want to hurt this person. It'll be what's best for them. If it's best for you, you have to trust that law of the universe. But I was so afraid of creating upset, of kicking over the apple cart, of creating disharmony, that I kept putting it off. And then finally, when I realized I had to tell her, and she said, no, you can't leave. She talked me into staying. I went, oh yeah, you're right. I'm going to stay. And then I had to go do it again, because about a month later, I'm like, what am I thinking? I'm not staying. I'm going. So I came and I told her, I said, Mars, no, it's over for me. And then she gave me all the reasons why I was nuts and that I should stay. You're right. I'm staying. And because again, I can't push because of this fear of this disharmony. And then another month went by and I realized, no. So I had to do it a third time. And each time it was difficult. But here's the point. I realized, I sound so altruistic. Oh, I didn't want to hurt Marcio. I didn't want to upset you. Because that is so, excuse my other French, but that was BS. I did not want to feel the discomfort.
Yes.
I was just totally protecting myself. I'm not some kind of freaking saint. I was just protecting myself because I don't like to feel like I disappointed somebody. I don't like to feel like and it was just so uncomfortable for me. And, you can hardly breathe. Like I know some of us who have gone through divorces, when you go to your partner and tell them it's over, you can't, I think it's over, I'll go tell them. No, it usually takes you years to get up the nerve. But if you wait years, it's going to be so much harder than it would have been right at the beginning. And I said to Mars, you know what? We have to live our principle. If I do what's best for me, it's going to be what's best for you. And somebody even better is going to come along and take my place. And she's like, no, there's nobody like you. Because we love each other so much, and we're sisters. And, but the truth is I stuck to my guns, and now the amazing Dr. Sue Morter and the amazing Lisa Garr have taken my place, and the new administrative people that we've hired to take over my administrative responsibilities. It is just as wonderful, and in my opinion, even more wonderful than it was in many ways when it was me and Marcy. There's new things, and Dr. Sue teaches like body stuff that Marcy and I are not experts in that area, and there's so much that's rich and new because I did what was courageous. And I spoke my truth. I mean, I could have easily stayed for another year and another year and another year, and my pocketbook would have been filled up and my soul would have been dying. Mm-hmm. And I would have kept, the status quo. But it is such a beautiful example of facing your fear, having the courage. And I always say the wings of the angels are there on the other side to catch you.
Mm. That's such a powerful story, and it just so clearly illustrates the process that we go through. Like there's the intuition, and then there's the promise of discomfort, which we do so much to avoid. But then when we finally work up our courage, on the other side, there's liberation and freedom and beyond what we could have imagined. And that's what so many human stories are about. That's what most movies are about, most books, most transformational speeches and motivational speeches. It's all about that kind of 3-step process. And it keeps us so interested in life.
And I'll tell you something. You said the thing about Brene Brown, when you move through something, I think you said that you're moving through it for many people or something like that. And at the beginning, and I'll tell you something else. I have had so many people email me and say, out of the 5 years in your year of miracles, that was the thing that inspired them the most when I left. that was the thing that they will always remember in terms of how to live their lives. And I'll tell you one other thing. It was a watershed moment for me, because all of this a lifetime of being the nice person and sublimating my own needs so that, God forbid, somebody would think I wasn't a nice person.
Yeah.
And so I would always twist myself into a pretzel to please other people. And after I did that, some energy shifted. Mm-hmm. And you know what? It's easy for me now to disappoint other people.
Yay!
It really is. It's like, what was I thinking, for all of these decades, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's so much easier to, I'm actually going to a wedding down in Santa Barbara, and about 10 people, stop and see me. Do you know that I would have made a way to stop and see every single one of those 10 people instead of disappointing one of them? And this time I said, well, no, actually, I'm not going to stop and see you. And I'm not, because it was just so that I could not be perceived as not a nice person, not because it was convenient for me or I necessarily wanted to see those people at this time.
Right. Yeah. Oh, it's so, like we were saying, it's so liberating. And when you work towards the hardest thing that it is for you to do, as you mentioned, there's an energetic shift. And then we've learned that lesson, and we don't need to keep on having reminders that we need to learn that lesson over and over.
Right. I'm like, I can't wait till somebody asks me for something so I could say no.
And I think, Debra, as transformational leaders, we are so fortunate to be in the position of teaching this kind of information. So when those crossroads do appear, we do need to follow what we teach. Otherwise, what's the point? And so I know personally for me, teaching about courage and having that branded right into the kind of self-care that interests me the most, it has not forced me, but welcomed me to be more courageous in my decisions and living by the principles that I advocate for others. So I just feel so fortunate that I'm called to teach these kinds of things, because I know I benefit the most.
Absolutely. And the two things, one is they always say we teach what we need to learn the most.
Uh-huh. I have a lot to
Right.
learn.
And also these days, it's like people are so aware of those people up there who are teaching one thing and doing something else. It's like years ago, people could get away with that. I mean, I remember one time, and I will not mention names, but when I started teaching success principles back in the 1980s, and one of my absolute heroes, one of the best-selling authors about principles, kind of energetic principles. It wasn't Napoleon Hill, but like those types of principles, and really behaving badly. I was at a meeting of the National Speakers Association, and I was sitting next to him, and he was making these horrible, crude, rude comments. I was devastated.
Yes.
But at that moment, I made the commitment that I will never be him. I will never do that. I will never teach anybody anything that I don't do myself. Or at least do the best job I can. And if I screw up, just pick up the pieces and try again.
Yes, I've had similar experiences and feel exactly the same way. There's no point in teaching it if you're not going to learn it yourself.
That's right. That's right. That's who we teach for. We teach for ourselves. So sorry, audience. We're just doing this for ourselves.
Just get to be a fly on the wall. Well, thank you for sharing that story, Debra. It's so powerful. And when we live by example, like you said, people are truly touched by that. So I appreciate getting the inside scoop on that story of courage. And I so honor you for walking your talk, because that just makes all your teaching make sense and make us believe that it's going to work. So I'm sure people are curious about learning more about you. Where can they find you?
Well, my website is Yes to Success, and it's not the number 2, it's T-O. So it's YESTO, success, yes2success.com. And I have a free gift on there, which I love. I just wrote it. It's an ebook, and it's called The 5 Secrets to Living a Life of True and Lasting Success. And it is, if I do say so myself, a really good book. And yeah, I just wrote it. It's brand new. So and that's her, and it's a free gift on my website. So I would love if people would take advantage of that.
Yes, please go to yes2success.com and get this result of your creative energy that you now have time to do.
That's right.
Yeah, and get that ebook. Well, Debra, thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for sharing who you are and your beautiful energy, and for taking time to hang out with me today. And for all the listeners, I'm going to speak for all of you, because I'm feeling really, really grateful and so blessed to be able to connect with you in this way.
And thank you. And thank you for who you are. You know that you are one of my favorite people on the planet. I have always admired your spirit. I've always admired your intelligence, your clarity, your mothering, your courage, your just everything about you. You are really one of my heroes. And to me, I just feel fortunate to know you.
Well, you are invited back on the show as often as you like.
Okay. Next week.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sad to say goodbye, but I feel like we have covered the territory that I wanted to cover. So, Debra, thank you again for being here. And I encourage you, if you're listening and you're feeling some sort of discomfort or energetic tension or even magnetic pull to sharing your story of courage, I would love to have you on the show. And so I invite you to apply. You can go to my website, ChristinaMarlette.com, and there's a button on there down the main page where you can apply to be a guest on the show. And I would love to hear your story of courage too, because the more we share our stories of courage, the more courageous we're all going to be. And that means we're moving through fear and coming through on the other side, even more who we are and who we are designed to be. So thank you for listening. Thanks again, Debra.
Thank you.
All right. And I look forward to talking with you again next time. Bye-bye for now.